Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll be continuing on with our initial AWS account setup. Now, a security best practice is that we don't want to use the AWS account root user for our day-to-day activities. That root user has special privileges to the billing aspects of the account, full administrative capabilities to do basically anything you want in the account, and to terminate the account itself. Therefore, we really want to protect that root user account and only use it when it's absolutely necessary. For those day-to-day operations in the account, you typically want to use an AWS Identity and Access Management user. This Identity and Access Management, or IAM for short, this service is a global service. And this just means that the users and groups and all the stuff we create in the IAM service apply across the scope of the entire AWS account, regardless of the global AWS region we use. So as an example, if we use services within the Canada Central region and also the Europe-Ireland region, we don't need IAM users created separately in each region that we want to use. Your IAM users, groups, and roles can be used across all the AWS regions. Now, I have an overview video on my YouTube channel that gets into some of the more specifics around AWS IAM. If you really want to dive deeper and understand the specifics around users, groups, roles, and the IAM policies a bit more. But for this video, we're just going to be doing a simple walkthrough of creating the AWS administrator group, applying a administrator permission policy to that group, and then creating a new IAM user that's part of that group. We can then use that IAM user for your day-to-day activities in the AWS account and for the scope of the course here. So let's take a look at how to set all that stuff up. So to get started, just log into the AWS Management Console if you aren't already. And then we're looking for the Identity and Access Management service. Now, the easiest way to find them is sometimes to just use the search bar here. We can just type in IAM, and we'll pick on the Identity and Access Management service. Now, there's a few ways we can go about creating our users, groups, and roles. But for our purposes, we're just going to pick the users option here and go through the new IAM user creation wizard, which will allow us to create a new group and apply the administrator permissions to it. So we'll just go ahead and click on the users. And then just on the right here, we want to click on the add users. And then just go ahead and enter in our username. I'm just going to put in Mike. And then pick both of these checkboxes here for the access keys for the programmatic access. These will give us the credential keys we need to access the AWS APIs programmatically. And then also a password where we can log into the AWS Management Console since we don't want to be using the root user anymore. And then next we set our password. We can pick the auto-generated password or a custom password. In my case, I'm going to use my password manager to generate a new secure password and paste that in here. So I'm just going to paste in that password that I generated. Now in our case, since we're not generating a new user and password for somebody else, we don't necessarily need to require the password reset. So I'm going to uncheck this and then just go down to our next permissions button here. So now we want to add our new user to an administrative group. Now, since that group doesn't exist yet, we're going to do create group. I'm just going to use the group name administrators. Now for this group, I'm going to pick this administrator access policy. Now, with this policy applied to the group, it gives any user that's part of this group full access to all the AWS services and resources. So this administrator access policy gives us permissions very similar to the AWS account root user. We just wouldn't have access to the privileged billing information to see credit card details, the billing details of the account if we don't provide that to the administrative users. And also we wouldn't have the ability to terminate the AWS account. Now, because this policy provides us access to pretty much everything within the AWS account, we want to make sure that the users that have access to this policy or group have very strong credentials. So make sure that you're using a strong, very complex password and that you set up multi-factor authentication, which we'll get into in another lesson. And then next, we're just going to go down to this create group button. And we can see our new administrator group and the administrator access policy attached to it. And this is the group that we're going to add our new user into. So next, we're going to go to the tags button. And for our purposes here, we can just skip over the adding tags and go to the review option. Now this final step is just a review that we're creating a new user with the username Mike. We're setting up the programmatic access and the AWS Management Console access. We've set a custom password, and that we're going to be adding this user to a new group called administrators. So we can go down and finally create the user. And perfect, so our new user is created. Now, before you move on from this page, it's important that you download or store this access key and secret access key. Now, this access key and secret access key are only provided at this point in time when we create the user. So we have to either download the access key and secret key through a CSV file we can download, or we can actually have that sent to us by email. Or you can also click the show button here, which will expose the secret access key. And then you can sort of copy and paste that to a different spot if you prefer that method. Now, I've usually done the download CSV option here and then store that file in a secure location. Or you can maybe copy and paste the access key and secret access key and then store them in a password manager or another secure location. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and click the download CSV option. And then I'm going to go ahead and store that in a secure location. But whatever method you use, make sure that you do grab your access key and secret access key and have that stored safely somewhere. Recall again that these credentials provide full administrative access to the AWS account, so we want to make sure that these are kept secure. So once you've gone ahead and grabbed your access key ID and secret access key somehow, you can go ahead and click the close button. And there we go. We've created the new IAM user that we're going to use for the rest of the course. Now, one best practice we want to make sure we do is set up the multi-factor authentication or MFA for our IAM users, and especially for our root user. So we're going to get into that in the next lesson and show you how to set up the multi-factor authentication on those. Now, one last thing before we wrap up the lesson to make it easier to sign into the AWS Management Console in the future, if you go to the dashboard link here, and then under the account alias option, hit create, we can add a preferred alias for the account. So rather than having this kind of account number as part of our sign-in URL, we can add an alias for the account to make it easier to remember. In my case, I'll enter Cloud Vikings Demo. And we see we can get a new sign-in URL based on our alias now. So just go ahead and save changes. Now what you can do is now copy this sign-in URL and then add it to your browser bookmark so you have quick access to the AWS Management Console login page. So as an example now, we want to log out of our root user. So we're going to sign out. And now we can just sort of paste in that new sign-in URL. And that takes us to the sign-in page with our account ID alias already picked out for us here. And we can enter our IAM username that we just created, and then enter in our password. And then sign in. Now we're logged back into our AWS Management Console as our IAM user instead of the root user. And we can see that indicated at the top here as well, that we're using the Mike user at our Cloud Vikings Demo account alias. And that's it for creating a new AWS IAM user. In the next lesson, again, we're going to go ahead and set up the multi-factor authentication for both our root user and this new IAM user, as it is a very important security best practice. But for now, thanks for watching and see you in the next lesson.